Good morning. Or howdy, I guess I'm supposed to say. It's fun to be back at Aggieland. Wow. Things have changed a little bit since I graduated here. Oh, a little over 20 years ago, so I'm aging myself. I guess, can y'all hear me? All right, so there's going to be entertainment. This is going to be fun. I want this to be encouraging. I don't want there to be any shaming. People are always nervous when they hear I'm going to talk about money, that I'm going to tell them they're in trouble, that they've done something wrong. There will be none of that. Just pure encouragement and fun. We do come bearing gifts in a few minutes. I'm going to pass out something. I want to keep you guys engaged. I want to stand up here. I don't want to talk at you. I'm not a preacher. I want to talk with you, and so feel free to raise your hand. I will have time at the end for questions and answers, and if I don't get to you and something comes up that you're just really wanting to talk about, I'll be out at the book table at the end in the lobby, so please come out there. I'll stay as long as you want me to stay and answer questions. I'd love to meet you in person, so please come say hello and introduce yourself. So without further ado, let's get started. I want to keep you engaged, and so I was trying to figure out what currency might encourage you guys to participate, and so I decided that the best incentive was a Starbucks gift card for women. All right? Okay, so I got a lot of them right here. So there's going to be trivia questions that are going to be dispersed intermittently throughout the presentation. If you see a question, a trivia question come up on the screen and you know the answer, raise your hand and I will call on you. And if you have the right answer, I'll be glad to gift you with a Starbucks treat on me. Sound good? All right. So stay with me here, folks. All right. Without further ado, we also come bearing chocolate. So we've got coffee, chocolate. It's everything you could dream of, right? So they're going to pass that out to you right now. Feel free to break into your candy bar. You're not going to insult me if you're rattling around with the wrapper. So enjoy. Let's have some fun this morning. Sound good? All right. Okay, this morning I'm going to be answering the question and helping you answer the question, what type of legacy are you leaving in your life? There is a choice to make. Is it going to be a legacy of excellence, or are you going to have regrets? And I want to talk to you today about leaving a legacy of excellence. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Dallas, Texas. I am a city girl at heart. I never envisioned my life living on 8 acres outside of Fort Worth, Texas on a farm, but that's where life led me, and it's been the best decision ever. My husband and I realized when our children were really small that we were all spending a lot of time doing this on our phones, and we wanted to encourage them and us as well to have an atmosphere where we got outside, we played, we engage with one another, they fish, they run around. We have neighbors that share a back fence. The kids go over the fence back and forth, and they're outside. So this wasn't my dream, but this is how my husband grew up. He grew up in Granbury on 32 acres, and so he helped me define the legacy for myself. And so sometimes the legacy doesn't come directly from you, but it comes from the people that are around you. And so this is where we live. What I didn't expect is how it would affect my business. You see, I work from home. I have an office that's attached to my home, and I was worried that clients might not want to come out there. And what happened was really monumental. People came out to visit me. We sat around the farm table, we looked out over the pond, and they opened up and they relaxed and they told me more about their hopes and their dreams and their futures and their family and what they wanted out of life. And they were much more open in this atmosphere than they were in a corporate office. And so I didn't expect my business to actually blossom by moving to the country. It sounds counterintuitive. And this is actually where the dream was born for Faithful Finance. I realized as I sat there with people around my farm table that everyone has an issue with money. Everyone wants good things for their future, but a lot of people just don't know how to get there. And so this is where the vision was born. So Webster has a definition of legacy. It's anything handed down from the past as from an ancestor or predecessor. That sounds a little formal, but really what it is you're passing down your values to the next generation. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how purposeful you're living, a lot of our values are caught more than taught. So actions often speak louder than words. So what I want to encourage you today is to make a conscious decision today to be purposeful and think about what values you're passing down to the next generation. And this doesn't mean that this is only applicable if you have children or grandchildren. We all have a center of influence in our life. Our communities, schools, children, nieces, nephews. So don't lose me here if you think, well, I don't have kids, I don't have a legacy. That's absolutely not true. So to start with a little tidbit about me and my Aggie legacy, and one of the reasons why I'm so excited to be here today is my great-grandfather was actually one of the first Ross volunteers here at A&M. He was class of 1896, which is interesting because I'm the class of 1996. So my Aggie legacy actually started 100 years before I ever graduated from A&M. This is 1984. That's me with my parents and my brother on Kyle Field. The brainwashing started early in our family. My dad graduated right there. That's him on the right. He was the class of 1961. Funny story, I lived in Kruger. Do y'all remember Kruger? I don't even know. Is it still there? All right, still standing. So I lived in Kruger, and when my dad dropped me off for my first day in the dorm at Texas A&M, he stood on the sidewalk and he was looking around, and I thought, oh, this is so sweet. He's going to miss me so much. He's having a moment. Not at all. What he was thinking to himself was, never in a million years did I think I would take my daughter to Texas A&M. Because when he was there, it was an all-male school, and a lot of us may take that for granted, that not that long ago, women weren't even allowed to attend this university. And if the statistics are still true, I think now have crossed over and there's more women here than men. So it's amazing the change that's happened in not that many years. Now, this is my husband on the right. This is my family, my kids. I also married an Aggie. I did not know him at the time at Texas A&M. We met later after we were both graduated from A&M. So now my poor kids have it coming from both sides of the family. And this is my family in New York. That's one of our traditions. We love to travel. We want to show our kids as much as we can about the world and different places. So this is us at Thanksgiving last year. And it is true what they say. You do get the mother-in-law when you get married too. So that's her right there. I have a gem of a mother-in-law, but be careful who you marry because you get the family too. So I have a client. Her name is Mrs. Levy. She's a lovely Jewish woman from New Jersey. I adore her. And whenever I say something that she agrees with, she says, Emily, from your mouth to God's ears. So this is from my mouth to God's ears. This is the future class of 2029 and 2034. These are my kids. That's Avery. She is 10 years old. She has decided already she wants to be a veterinarian. So we're hoping that indeed happens. I realized she could change her mind a few times before then. And that's my baby boy. He is 6 years old. He's graduating from kindergarten next week, which is hard to believe. So they're growing up fast. So let's talk about the secrets for leaving a great legacy. Folks, we only have 3 major finite resources in our life. We have time, we all have unique talents and gifts, and then we have our money. So what we're going to talk about today is how do we best utilize our 3 finite resources. Time, you can't save it, you can't bank it. The only thing you're guaranteed is today. And so I'm not trying to be morbid or scare you, but once again, I'm just wanting to encourage you to think today about how you're using your time. So here's your first opportunity, Starbucks gift card. Here's a trivia question. I'm going to play this song and tell me what band originally recorded this song. That's right. Okay, so here's the second one. Who did the Byrds steal the lyrics from? Ecclesiastes 3:1. Nothing has changed. 2,000 plus years. So does that tell you something? The Byrds took every lyric to that song from a biblical worldview, and nothing has changed. So there is a season in life for everything, and so you want to be prepared for the season that you're in. Just wanted to give y'all a little extra blurb. All right, secret number one. I talked about this a minute ago, but live with intention. Use your time wisely. That sounds great in theory, but how do you do that? Well, one of the things that I learned firsthand a few years ago is my husband's grandmother passed away. She was lovely, and I adored this woman. She was almost 90 years old, and she had been in the banking world for about 45 years, way before that was common for someone from her generation. And so she and I were kindred spirits. She always treated me as though I was her own granddaughter. Before I married my husband, both of my grandparents had already been deceased, so she adopted me as her granddaughter. And when she passed away, I volunteered to write her eulogy. What I did not agree to was to give the eulogy. And so after I wrote the eulogy, their family came to me and said, this won't sound the same from somebody else if they read your words. We want you to give the eulogy. And I said, oh, that's so flattering, but no thank you. That's not really in my wheelhouse. I talk to people about money, but not death, and funerals, not my thing. And then I realized my daughter was sitting there, and she knew that that's not something I wanted to do, but it was the right thing to do to honor the generation before. And the only thing that really got me through that was I thought, what message am I sending to my daughter if I say no? Am I going to show up in life and do the right thing and honor another generation that came before me, or I'm going to let fear take over and say, no, I don't want to do that because I'm uncomfortable with possibly getting emotional in front of people. And so I decided to do it, but it was a poignant moment in my life because I realized, what are people going to say about me when I am in this situation? And it's, unfortunately, life is moving so fast. And so it was a fork stuck in the road moment for me when I wrote someone else's eulogy to think, what do I want them to say about me? I had an opportunity to spend some time with Bob Goff. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a motivational speaker and author. He is delightful. And I laughed because he said to me, he goes, I've got 10,000 days left. And I don't want to spend it with anybody that causes drama in my life. I'm not wasting it on anybody. And so that was another thing where I thought, amen. So let's talk about the dash. You may have heard this poem before. It was originally written by a lady named Linda Ellis in 1996, which is also interesting to me since that's the year I graduated from A&M. I can't give you a copy of this because it is copyrighted. Is that how you say that? Copyrighted? Copyrighted? Anyway, but I can read it to you, and so I'm going to read this to you. Forgive me if you've already heard this, but I think it's a good reminder to everybody. So here it goes. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time that they spent alive on earth. And now only those who loved them know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real and always try to understand the way other people feel. And be less quick to anger and show appreciation more and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash? So let's talk about how to use your time wisely. These are secrets I've been contemplating. I think you need to have a solid anchor in your life. For everybody, that can be different. For me, I'm a Jesus girl, but that's not why we're here today. But that's my anchor in my life. You may have a different faith tradition. You may have family, friends, a mentor, someone, something that gives you a solid anchor in your life. And I think that's really important for us all, to have something that we can hold on to that is steady. I want you to nurture your relationships with family and friends. No one was ever successful on an island by themselves. It just doesn't happen. This is something I've been talking to my kids about. Don't get a job. Pursue a career that aligns with your unique talents and gift mix. What gets you excited to wake up in the morning? And I'm not encouraging you, if you don't like your job, to quit tomorrow morning. Hear me now. However, I do want you to think about, do I enjoy what I'm doing? Is it filling me up? Is it giving me purpose? And when it's all said and done, will I be excited about how I used my time? Because let's face it, that's a big part of our lives, is our career and what we work and what we do. Here's something interesting. If I looked at your daily to-do list, and some of you might have a grocery list in your head right now while I'm talking, but does your daily to-do list actually line up with your priorities? If you were to tell me how you spent your day, would I know what's important to you? We all need plans. I'm a planner. That's what I do for a living, but I like plans. But I've also learned that plans have to be fluid. Make a plan so you have direction, but then feel free to reevaluate at least once a year and say, what's working? What needs to change in my life? My husband and I have a tradition. On New Year's Eve, we go out on a date. And we talk about the year in the past, and we say, what was the best thing that happened last year? What was the worst thing? If we could do something different, what would we do? And I also, when we have conversations, I am really bad about, I can be next to you, but not present. If you know what I mean, I've got kids, I've got work, I've got to-do lists running in my head. And so we developed this tradition where we use a ball. And so if it's really something where we need to talk, and I need to be present, we throw a ball back and forth. It sounds silly, but you can't think about a whole lot else if you're trying to catch a ball while someone's talking to you. Figure out what works for you, but that's something that we figured out from a communication standpoint is a way for us to be present and focused. All right, this is my baby boy. I am really bad about getting bogged down in the dailies. I don't know about you, but I worry about stuff that just doesn't matter. Funny story, When I was pregnant with my first child, my daughter, I didn't know I was having a girl, but I have a really close relationship with my mother. I love her dearly, and I always wanted to have a daughter. And so when I found out I was having a baby girl, I was ecstatic. I had the nursery decorated in my head. There was going to be pink. There was going to be ruffles everywhere. And it was great, and I loved her dearly, and it was exactly what I had wanted. And then fast forward a few years, and I found out that I was expecting again. So now my daughter's about 4.5 years old, and she was old enough to understand that she was going to be a big sister. And so we thought, this will be great. We'll take her to the doctor's appointment where they tell you whether you're having a boy or a girl. And so the sonographer was doing the little wand thing, and he said, "Congratulations, it's a baby boy." And my daughter threw herself on the floor of the hospital and said, "No, I wanted a sister. It's not a boy." And honestly, I felt the same way. I don't like dirty stuff. I don't like dinosaurs. I don't like trucks. I don't like smelly things. And all I could think was, oh no, how am I going to be a boy mom? But because she was having a meltdown, I had to encourage her. Oh no, this is going to be great. So I'm glad I had a little time to prepare. What I did not know is how much I would fall in love with that boy. I don't know if any of you have boys, but there is something about a baby boy. So fast forward, this child is born. I am absolutely in love with this baby. I told my husband, I honestly just want to lick him. He said, "Please don't." I said, "All right." So he was about 2 weeks old, and I went out to lunch with some friends. I have a mom's group of ladies in Fort Worth that we've raised our kids together. And it was the first time I'd really been out of the house and gotten dressed and taken him out, and they got to meet the baby. And I started crying, and they said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I just realized he's going to grow up and get married and leave me, and I'm not going to be the most important woman in his life." Okay, so there might have been some hormones. But to say that I love this child is an understatement. 2 weeks ago, he walked into my room at 1:30 in the morning, and he grabbed my arm, and the only thing coming out of him was, I lurched out of my bed. I'm not good in medical crisis. I'm not good. It's not my wheelhouse. Fortunately, I have a husband in the medical field who takes care of children on a daily basis, and so this is right where he shines. He couldn't speak, he couldn't breathe. I have pretty bad allergies, and I keep an inhaler on hand, but I never use it. So at 1:30 in the morning, as I'm woken up out of a dead sleep with a child that can barely breathe, all I can think of, where's the inhaler? Is it in my red purse? It is in my bathroom? Is it in the kitchen cabinets? I'm ransacking the house. It looked like we'd been robbed. My husband found it, no problem. I'm still looking for it. Don't even realize he has it already. He calms the child down. We give him the inhaler, give him Benadryl, an EpiPen, and while I'm giving him water and holding him, my husband immediately got dressed and rushed him to the hospital. I stayed at home with my daughter. She's asleep, doesn't even know this is going on. Anyway, fast forward, it turned out he had the croup virus that came on really suddenly. I didn't know it could come on within a matter of hours. It paralyzed his vocal box. He couldn't speak. When they gave him a breathing treatment at the hospital, it calmed it down. They kept him overnight for observation, and then they brought him home the next morning. This picture, you'll see he's very pale. He's got dark circles under his eyes. Well, I kept going in to check him. And so about the 10th time that I'd gone into his room to check to see if he was breathing, I had my phone in my back pocket. And I said, you know what? I've spent a lot of time worrying about stuff that doesn't matter. And so I said, I'm going to build an altar right here, right now. And this is the picture I took to say, when I start worrying about the dailies and getting involved in stuff that doesn't matter, don't sweat the small stuff. And when I point at you, I have one finger pointing at you and three pointing back at myself, because this is something that I'm talking to myself about. So this is my altar of remembrance. Folks, we cannot waste time. We can't focus on stuff that just doesn't matter. When your baby boy can't breathe, the other stuff doesn't matter. So let's take it up a notch. This is something I've also learned. As a first-time mom when my daughter was in kindergarten, I thought that the best mom volunteered for everything. So I'm not crafty. I love the Pinterest moms. I so wish I was one. But I'm not. But I volunteered to be at the school a minimum of 2 hours a week. And what happened was I ended up being in the teacher workroom, not spending time with my daughter, cutting out gingerbread men for Christmas and candy canes and lollipops. And finally I came home to my husband. I was complaining about this, and he said, "Is this really the best use of your time? You could be working and getting what you need to do done while your child's in school rather than sitting in the workroom at the school, because that makes you a good mom." And so it was a good lesson for me. By learning to say no graciously, I've learned to say yes to the things that are the best. So I look at my day, and I look at my week, and I look at my month, and I look at my year. I have a calendar, and I say, is that something that I can give my full time and commitment to and do it well? Or are there other people that can do that better than I can? And by saying yes to the wrong things, I'm either going to disappoint people because I'm going to be late, disheveled, not do a good job, or I can figure out what's in my wheelhouse, what's my gift mix, and do the things that are the best use of my time. Here's something interesting. Let's talk about secret number 2. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but we all need to use our time and our talents wisely. How are you wired? So if you're not sure, there is something called the Enneagram personality test. I've gotten interested in this lately. There's 9 personality types. This isn't a new personality test. It's been around since the 4th century, and it's surprisingly accurate. So if you're not sure how you're wired, that would be a good thing to take. It's a question and answer thing. If you look up on the internet, you'll find it everywhere. But once you have a personality type, I'm a 1. There's a healthy one and an unhealthy one. So it's really interesting to see what your tendencies are if you're living well or not living so well. So it's a good exercise. You can also ask your friends and family for an honest answer and feedback. They will be probably more than happy to tell you how you're wired and what is your unique gift mix. But this is something to be really well aware of. I wasn't using my gift mix by cutting out gingerbread men in the teacher workroom. That wasn't where my time was best spent. And so this is part of leaving a legacy. No one will care that I did that, but somebody else will do that much better than I did. So my friend Melissa Maloney Walk is here today. Love her. We met at the Theta House at Texas A&M years ago, and she told me this recently. We all need to focus on our strengths, not our weaknesses. So for example, I'm not a good cook. I have tried. I really try, because it's really important to me as a legacy that my family, we sit around the table every night and we have dinner together as many nights as possible, because there's no diminishing return on time spent as a family around the table. What doesn't really matter is whether I'm serving McDonald's or filet mignon. And so what is important is the time spent. Well, Melissa has become what's called a strength coach. Is that correct? And so what she helps people do, and most of us have a tendency to focus on our weaknesses and trying to improve that area of our life, rather than saying, you know what, this is how I'm wired. This is me. So let's capitalize on my strengths and not my weaknesses. Does that make sense? All right, let's move on. Here's the next opportunity for a Starbucks gift card. Can anyone articulate how your personality affects your view of money? In other words, are you a saver or a spender? Are you fearful? Are you proactive or reactive? Does anybody want to jump in? Here we go.
I'm very spontaneous.
Okay, that can be good and bad. All right. So how does that affect your money habits?
It decreases it.
In other words, you have less than you did. You're not alone, friends. You're not alone. All right, so now let's talk about, this is what my career is based on, how to manage money wisely. It's interesting, as a financial advisor, now it's been over 20 years, and what I figured out is how you use your money really represents what's important to you. So I always ask people, so many of us have recurring charges in our bank accounts, and I said, if I were to look in your checking account and I were to see what comes out of your account on a recurring basis, would I know what's important to you? It's an interesting concept. So for me, I was the best parent ever before I had kids. I was so good. I had all the answers. And so I always encouraged all my clients to live in a neighborhood, in a school district where you like the public schools. Property taxes are tax deductible. Private school, you'll never get that back. I now send 2 kids to private school. And so it's a decision my husband and I have made for our kids. Education is very unique. Every family is different. But if you look in my checking account, you'll see a debit every month going to school for my kids because education is something we decided to focus on. You'll know it's important. You'll know what charities, what things I support. You'll know that I have a bad purse habit. You'll know that I love Starbucks. So there's different things that you'll see coming out of my checking account, and you could say, is that really where your heart is? Sometimes I have to reevaluate and say, not doing such a good job on that. So that's something to think about. Take some time to reflect. Go back and look. If you can go through your bank account or a credit card statement, it's interesting if you start to see a pattern in how you're spending your money. There's good news with money. Everyone thinks I'm going to shame you, and that's what I said at the beginning. There's no shame here. You don't have to live with fear and anxiety as it relates to money. This problem is epidemic. People are so nervous to even talk about it out loud. It's one of the top 3 reasons couples divorce. They don't agree on money. It's one of the main reasons people have anxiety and depression disorders because they're so concerned, but they don't know where to go, what to do, how to move forward. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. Okay, here's a little video about a budget, and there are subtitles if you can't quite understand what she's saying.
So guess what? Mommy and Daddy's on a budget. I don't know what that is. I asked Mommy, what's that budget? She said, no Target, no toys, no pizza dress, no Starbucks. Oh, Jay is a credit card and the dollar bills. Who does that? Can't. Oh, a budget? Why? Maybe I can get this job. Is that qualified? Whatever.
So that's how most of you probably feel about a budget. Okay, so I've taken all the excuses away because the number one thing I ask people before we talk about any other goal is I say, do you have a budget? If you don't know how much money is coming in and you don't know how much money is going out, it's hard to be proactive with your planning with your money. So the next excuse is, well, I don't know where to start. I don't know how to create a budget. I don't know what should be included in the budget. So I have eliminated all excuses. I have created a very detailed budget worksheet. All you have to do is enter the information and add and subtract. So if you'll go to my website, www.emilygStroud.com, enter your email address, and I will personally send you a budget worksheet. So this is the number one thing you need to do as a tool to manage your money. You've got to figure out how you're spending your money, period. Another thing, people come to me and they say, oh, we want to save for retirement, we want to save for college, and we'd like to buy a house. And I say, that's fantastic. How much cash do you have on hand? And they get a deer in the headlights look. So everything is a crisis if you don't have a cash reserve, folks. You've got to have cash on hand for these little unforeseen things that happen in life, whether it's a medical bill or a broken dishwasher. You don't want to have two crises, one the problem and two you can't pay for it. So that's the second step. After you get a budget, you got to have a cash reserve. Trivia. How many months of living expenses should you maintain in a cash reserve account? Well, I don't know who said it. Okay, so here, I'll make it a little bit more difficult, because y'all are smarter than I thought. Let me think for a second. If I'm self-employed and my income fluctuates from month to month, how many months of living expenses should I have on hand? 6 to 12, I'll give it to you. I usually tell people, honestly, 3 months of living expenses if they have a very stable job, they have a spouse who works or other income and assets to compensate for that time when they may not have income coming in. But 6 months if you're self-employed, or if there's instability in your industry or your career, for example, there's layoffs that happen often, then at least 6 months of living expenses in cash. Once again, you won't know how much a monthly amount of living expenses is if you don't have a budget. See how there's a pattern here? Is all debt bad? No. I know, surprise. People are always surprised to hear me say this, but not all debt is bad. This is how I differ from some folks in the financial services industry. For example, a mortgage debt is not bad if you know that you can reasonably afford the mortgage payments, the maintenance, the property taxes, if you've done your budget planning, if you've done the cash reserve, if you are diligent about your budget. And the reason a mortgage isn't bad is most people in this day and time cannot pay cash outright for a house. But if you never purchase a home with a mortgage, then you'll never own anything, and then you'll always be a renter, which means you're a slave to the landlord. So a mortgage is not necessarily a bad debt. Same thing with a business loan. If you're doing something that will help grow your assets and your portfolio by creating a business that supports your family and possibly even generations to come, most people cannot start a business from scratch unless it's something that deals with intellectual capital, like financial planning or consulting, that sort of thing. My husband's a pediatric dentist. One dental chair costs $25,000, and you can't run a dental practice with one chair. So most people don't have the capital outright when they're young and getting out of school to start a business with $0. So not all debt is bad. Credit cards are bad if you do not pay them off every month. I use credit cards because I like to travel, so I collect the points, but we pay them off every month. Everybody knows whether or not you are disciplined enough to use a credit card wisely or not. I always tell people, if it has wheels or it floats, you should not have a loan on that. So that's something to think about. Those are depreciating assets. So by borrowing money to buy something that's worth less 20 minutes later, that's not a good use of debt. And all of this is covered in my book. I'm touching on high-level stuff, and so all of these topics are going to be in my book, and you can get a lot more detail on the topic you're actually interested in. And also, I'll be outside by the book table if you have specific questions that you want to ask me, because I'm just giving you all high-level points, but I want to let you know there's ways to get more information. Automate your savings. Saving money provides financial freedom. Save is not a four-letter word. It is a decision you make today so that you can live better to tomorrow. Trivia. Should you save money at the beginning of the month or the end of the month? Very good. If you wait to pay yourself until the end of the month, then you'll pass that. If you wait to save money till the end of the month, you'll never do it. The best thing to do is if you can set up an auto draft in your bank account, your brokerage account, however you do that in your personal life. And so it's just an automated thing. I always say pay yourself first and then pay everybody else second. That way, this choice that you make to save automatically happens. And most times people tell me, you know what, I don't even miss that money, because they get used to seeing the net amount left over and that's what they spend. Also, it gives you peace of mind if you do have monthly income left over at the end of the month. You've already done everything you were supposed to do responsibly, and you can feel comfortable eating out, discretionary spending, travel, whatever it is that you love, without guilt. So saving really is something that gives you peace of mind, and it helps you build your legacy long term. This is something that people don't realize a lot of times. They think they can't afford to give. And so I always tell people, you have to make a decision, kind of like paying yourself first. You have to make a choice to choose to be generous. Usually, you're going to be blessed more in return. Now, the blessings look different for everybody. I'm not up here preaching a prosperity gospel that if you give all your money away, you're going to be rich beyond your imagination because you're going to be blessed so much. What I am telling you is you'll begin to live like this rather than like this. And there's such a difference in how you feel, and this has a lot to do with legacy planning. When it's all said and done and they're reading your eulogy and they're talking about your dash, will you be leaving a legacy of excellence and generosity, or will you be leaving a legacy of a lot of money in the bank account but really no life to show for it? So I always tell people, expect to be blessed in return. The blessings will look different, but make a choice. Choose to be generous. Figure out what your passion is and support it. Now, investing, I always get people ask me, how should I invest my money? I was, well, let's back up a little bit. It's everybody's situation is unique. Everybody's situation is different. If anybody guarantees you anything, please be skeptical. There are no guarantees. You need to develop a plan and monitor it. Now, this is where a professional comes into play. There's a difference between an investor and a speculator. I want you to be an investor, not a speculator. A speculator is someone who invests in one commodity or the latest tech stock, one stock, no diversification, without a plan. Once again, I cover this a lot more in detail in the book. I can't stand up here and give you all advice on investing, but I do want you to know there's more strategies and things you can do today to invest your money wisely with even downside protection than there ever has been before. So everybody can be an investor. You just need to seek wise counsel when you're deciding how to do that. Everyone should have investment goals. When you're talking to wise counsel or your spouse, you need to decide what is the most important thing to us in our situation right now in order to decide how to invest your money. This is where the time horizon comes in. If I'm sending a kid to college in 3 years, then that money needs to be pretty conservative. If I'm 25 years old and I'm investing for retirement, then that money can be a lot more aggressive. So you need to have goals, you need to know what your time horizon is, and then you need to figure out a plan that makes sense for your situation. All right, this is one that I get asked all the time. Which savings goal should be your priority? Saving for your children or your grandchildren's college education, or saving for your own retirement? Yay, y'all are so good. That is true. Most people get that wrong. They think that they can put off retirement because it seems like it's far away and that the kids going to college is much more imminent. The reality is you cannot take a loan for retirement, but your children can get educated in a lot of different ways. So I am a huge proponent of education, so don't hear me incorrectly. I'm not saying don't save for college. if that's important to you for your family. However, you don't want to be a burden to them later in life because you put them for school, but then you didn't save anything for retirement. So retirement has to be your number one priority. Here's something else, another trivia question. What is the most valuable asset you need to insure? Back there. Yay! Most people get that wrong too. Your ability to work and create an income for yourself is your most valuable asset. It's not your jewelry, it's not your house, it's not your car. It's your ability to generate income for your family and yourself. Unfortunately, none of us are exempt. We can't avoid sickness or death in this life. But I honestly tell people, while you're in your working years, you need disability insurance more than you need life insurance. Now, life insurance you should have, especially if you are providing for folks that are dependent upon you. However, the worst case scenario is if you live and you no longer can work and then your medical bills skyrocket because you're disabled and now you can't support your family and you can't support yourself. That's where people literally become indigent, is by not having disability insurance. Is your life insured? I always ask people this. This is something that you can talk to me more about if you'd like more information. But long-term care insurance, disability insurance, and life insurance are the three types of insurance that you possibly may need. The only time you don't need insurance is if you're independently wealthy and what we call self-insured. And people do reach a point where that is the case, but not everybody is in that situation. And this is another situation where wise counsel and somebody that can help you evaluate your particular financial situation is really important, and they can help you make that decision. Estate planning is a great legacy. This is a big one. Having a will. It's not that hard to get a will. If you'd like more information about how to do that, I'm not an estate planning attorney, but I can tell you how easy it is to do that now. There really are no excuses. You can do it quite inexpensively if you don't have a big estate or a lot of assets, but you need to have a will. Whoops. What is the number one reason people do not get a will? No. Nope. 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 No. No. Nope. 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 I'll give you a hint. Has to do with children. They have children. I heard it over here. Yes! People cannot agree on a guardian for their children, so they procrastinate because I want my brother to have the kids and he wants his mother to have the kids, and so rather than getting into an argument, we'll just put it off for another day. So that's the number one reason people don't get a will. So have that conversation and make a decision. What does a will accomplish? It allows you to have sole discretion over the distribution of your assets. There is a misnomer out there that if you don't have a will that the state gets everything you own. That is not true. However, your estate's going to go through probate and your assets may or may not go to the people that you intended them to go to. So by having a will, you get to really manage your affairs from the grave. And so you make sure that you are leaving the legacy that you intended to leave. And also, we just touched on this, the biggest number one reason if you have children that are minors, or in other words, they're under 18 years of age, you appoint a guardian for them that you agree upon and think is the best fit for your kids. Okay, this is another interesting one. What happens if the beneficiaries of your estate outlined in your will do not match the beneficiary designations listed on your retirement accounts or your life insurance policies? In other words, who gets the money? Very good. This is how people leave money to ex-wives that they never intended to do. It's a big oops. So when you start a job in your 20s and you fill out the paperwork with the Human Resources Department and they give you life insurance and they supplement the cost, or you open an IRA here and a Roth IRA over there and a 401k over there, you're given the opportunity to list primary beneficiary and contingent beneficiaries. That is correct. Well done. I'll give you a card for that. So I'll repeat what she said. If you're married, the primary beneficiary should be your spouse, unless you're having issues, I guess. But it should, 99% of the time, it is 100% your spouse. But she said it well. The contingent beneficiary, rather than 50% to so-and-so and 50% to so-and-so if you both pass away in a common accident or one after the other, should be, for me, it would be the estate of Emily G. Stroud. So if I pass away, my husband passes away, my contingent beneficiary is now my estate. So then it goes to the will and refers to how I outlined my estate in the will. If you're single and not married, and you know, it might be your mother, your sister, or your friend that's your primary beneficiary. If you don't have anybody, which is rare that you don't have someone that you would appoint your primary beneficiary, then you can just say to the estate of your name. Here's one more trivia question. Can you leave money to minor children if they're listed as contingent beneficiaries? No. This is a big mistake people make. You can't leave money to minor children. It has to be left in a trust for their benefit. So this is another thing that I see a lot of times is, for example, in my case, I would have my husband listed as primary beneficiary, and then I'd have my 10-year-old and my 6-year-old listed as 50-50 contingent beneficiaries. That doesn't hold up in court because they're minors. So, once again, one more reason not to have a contingent beneficiary listed, that instead of saying a person, say the estate of and your name. All right, well, that's all I have for you today. For more information, please meet me out there. I don't know how we're doing on time. Do we have time for questions and answers? 2 questions? I'm so glad you asked. She just said, how do you find wise counsel? And this is something I talk a lot about in my book. How do you know that you're going to someone you trust, or that you can trust with your finances? Number one, if you have people in your life that you respect and you trust, and they have advisors in place that they have used, I always say that's the number one way. Get a referral. Someone you know can vouch for that person. There's also a website called finra.org where you can go on. For example, you could look me up and see if I have any fines, delinquencies, or anything against me. You can do background checks on advisors. But really, folks, it's people that you've been referred to that you know and trust, and that have the designations and the education. There's a lot of people in my industry that can sell ice to Alaskans, but they don't necessarily have the educational background to be giving anybody advice. And that's one of my pet peeves. And so make sure that they actually have done their homework and their education and their research, and they've got years of experience before you start taking advice from anyone. Yes? Right here, Melissa Maloney Walk. She's my friend. Melissa, head and counsel. Do you do that? Okay, yes, she's available. Define wise counsel? Oh, FINRA.org, FINRA. It's the Financial Regulatory Authority.org, FINRA.org. Okay, last one. No, she asked, are you required to list a family member in your will? There are no rules. You can list whoever you want as long as you outline your desires. Not as long as your estate plan is set up correctly. I'm not an attorney. That's where you'll need to get sound legal advice. All right, thank you so much.